The red dot appeared on his chest as I was reaching for the cinnamon shaker. My hand froze midair, every nerve in my body screaming danger as I watched the tiny point of light dance across the expensive fabric of his suit jacket. He sat at the corner table like he owned the place, which, I'd later learn, he actually did, scrolling through his phone with the casual indifference of someone who'd never had to look over their shoulder. The laser sight drifted upward, steadying over his heart. I had maybe 3 seconds to decide. Mind my business like every survival instinct told me to, or save a stranger's life and possibly end my own. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. I grabbed his cappuccino from the counter and crossed the cafe floor, my heart hammering so hard I was certain everyone could hear it. The morning rush had thinned to a handful of laptop warriors and retirees nursing their coffee like liquid gold. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, making the whole space feel warm and safe. A lie I was about to shatter. He looked up as I approached, and I got my first real look at him. Dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on a movie screen, all sharp angles and dangerous beauty. His eyes were the color of smoke, gray with flecks of silver that caught the light as they assessed me with the kind of attention that made my skin prickle. Not the casual glance of a customer looking at their barista, but the focused study of a predator evaluating potential prey. I set the cup down, leaning in closer than necessary, my hand trembling as I adjusted the saucer. "Act natural," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the soft jazz playing through the speakers. His eyes locked onto mine, and I saw the exact moment his entire demeanor shifted, the relaxation evaporating, replaced by coiled tension. "Laser on your chest, red dot, don't move." For a heartbeat, nothing happened. He didn't flinch, didn't look around, didn't do any of the things I expected. Instead, he smiled, a slow, deliberate curve of his lips that somehow made him look more dangerous, not less, and his hands gripped the cup I'd just set down. "Smart girl," he murmured, his voice a low rumble that sent an involuntary shiver down my spine. "Which direction?" I pretended to wipe an imaginary spill from his table, my hand shaking as I reached for a napkin. Building across the street, 4th floor, 2nd window from the left, I saw the glint in the glass. His smile widened slightly, though his eyes remained cold as winter. "What's your name?" "Ava," I said, because lying seemed pointless when he was asking while someone had a rifle trained on him. "Well, Ava, in about 10 seconds, I'm going to need you to drop to the floor." My breath caught. "What?" "When I stand up, whoever's up there will take the shot. You're in the line of fire." He said it so calmly, like he was discussing the weather, not my potential death. "So when I move, you drop, understand?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Good girl. Now step back and act normal. Laugh like I said something charming." I forced a laugh that sounded more hysteric than charming, but it must have been convincing enough because he nodded slightly. 3, he counted softly, his fingers still wrapped around the cup. 2, I took a step backward, my whole body tensing. 1. He moved faster than should have been possible for someone his size, surging up from his chair and flipping the table in one fluid motion. I dropped, my knees hitting the hardwood floor as the front window exploded inward in a shower of glass. Screams erupted around me as the cafe descended into chaos. Someone grabbed my arm, Him, I realized, as he hauled me behind the dubious cover of the overturned table. "Stay down," he commanded, his body positioned between me and the window, one hand reaching inside his jacket. When it emerged, he was holding a gun, matte black and lethal-looking. The world had gone mad in the space of a heartbeat. Mrs. Chen, the regular who came in every morning for her green tea, was huddled under a table, her hands over her head. Dylan, my co-worker, had disappeared behind the counter. Smart kid. The retirees had hit the deck with a speed that suggested they'd done this before, which made me wonder what kind of neighborhood I'd really been working in for the past year. Another shot cracked through the air, punching through the espresso machine with a hiss of steam and the sharp smell of scorched metal. He returned fire through the shattered window, 3 quick shots that sounded impossibly loud in the enclosed space, and then he was moving again, pulling me with him toward the back of the cafe. "We need to go. Now." His hand was iron around my wrist, not painful, but unbreakable. "I can't just leave. My job. Your job won't matter if you're dead." He kicked open the emergency exit door, flooding the dim hallway with afternoon light. "That wasn't a warning shot. They were trying to kill you too." The alley behind the cafe smelled like garbage and old rain. He moved with the confidence of someone who knew exactly where he was going, and I stumbled after him, my mind still trying to catch up with what had just happened. A black SUV pulled up at the end of the alley, its engine running, and he shoved me toward it. "Get in." I planted my feet, some deeply buried sense of self-preservation finally kicking in. I'm not getting in a car with a stranger who just got shot at in my cafe. He turned to face me fully, and for the first time, I saw blood, a dark stain spreading across his left shoulder where a bullet had grazed him. "You saved my life in there. That makes you a witness, and worse, it makes you a target. So you have 2 choices. Come with me where I can protect you, or stay here and explain to whoever sent that shooter why you're still breathing." Put that way, it wasn't much of a choice at all. The interior of the SUV was all leather and tinted windows, the kind of vehicle that cost more than I'd make in 5 years of pulling espresso shots. A man sat in the driver's seat, older, with salt and pepper hair and the build of someone who could break me in half without working up a sweat. He didn't react to my presence, just put the car in gear and pulled into traffic like we weren't fleeing an active crime scene. "Where are we going?" I asked, pressing myself against the far door, as far from the bleeding man beside me as the confined space allowed. "Somewhere safe." He shrugged out of his jacket, wincing slightly as the fabric pulled away from his wound. Underneath, his white shirt was pristine except for the spreading crimson stain. "I need to make some calls, and you need to stay alive long enough for me to figure out why you risked your life for mine." "I didn't think," I admitted, watching as he pulled a phone from his pocket and dialed with one hand while pressing his jacket against his shoulder with the other. "I just saw the laser and reacted." "Stupid," he said, but there was something almost admiring in his tone. "Brave, but stupid. Most people would have run or screamed. You warned me." His call connected, and he switched to rapid Italian, his voice dropping even lower. I caught a few words, names maybe, and locations. But mostly, I just listened to the rhythm of his speech, the way his accent curled around the syllables with an intimacy that made the language sound like a seduction. When he ended the call, he turned his full attention back to me, and I felt pinned by the intensity of his gaze. "Do you know who I am, Ava?" I shook my head, though pieces were starting to click together in my mind. The expensive suit, the casual way he'd produced a gun, the immediate response team. This wasn't just some random businessman who'd gotten unlucky. My name is Dante Vitale. He said it like it should mean something, and from the way the driver's shoulders tensed slightly, it clearly did. And as of about 5 minutes ago, you became the most important person in my world. I laughed, a sharp, nervous sound that didn't contain any real humor. I think you're confused. I'm nobody, just a barista who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. You're a barista who saved my life, which means whoever wanted me dead now wants you dead too. They'll assume we're connected, that you were working with me, warned me deliberately. They won't believe it was random chance. The car turned onto a highway on-ramp, and I watched the city blur past, my apartment, my life, everything familiar, disappearing behind us. This is insane. I should go to the police. The police can't protect you from the people who just tried to kill me. Dante's voice was flat, matter-of-fact. Trust me when I say you're safer with me than anywhere else in this city. Why should I trust you? I don't even know you. Because I'm the only thing standing between you and a bullet. He leaned back against the seat, his face pale beneath his tan. The blood loss was starting to affect him, I realized. And because whether you like it or not, Ava, we're in this together now. The safe house, if you could call it that, was a penthouse apartment in the financial district, all glass and steel and modern art that probably cost more than my entire college education. Dante's people had appeared the moment we arrived, a whole team of them moving with military precision. A doctor had seen to his shoulder, stitching the graze with efficient competence, while I sat on a white leather couch and tried to process the surreal turn my morning had taken. I'd left for work 7 hours ago, expecting another boring Tuesday of lattes and small talk. Instead, I'd witnessed an assassination attempt, been kidnapped or rescued, depending on perspective, and was now sitting in a penthouse with a man who apparently had enough enemies to warrant multiple murder attempts. You should eat something. A woman appeared beside me, older, with kind eyes and an accent similar to Dante's. She held out a plate with sandwiches and fruit. You're in shock. Food will help. I took the plate automatically, though my stomach was churning too much to consider actually eating. Who are you? Isabella. I manage Mr. Vitale's household. She sat down beside me, her posture relaxed, but her eyes sharp. He asked me to make sure you're comfortable. Comfortable, I repeated, looking around at the opulent space. I was almost killed this morning. Comfortable seems like a stretch. Isabella's expression softened. I know this is frightening, but you're safe here. Mr. Vitale protects his people. I'm not his people. I'm just someone who happened to be working when... I stopped, realizing I didn't even know what when meant. What had I stumbled into? When someone tried to kill him, Isabella finished. Yes, and by warning him, by saving his life, you've become part of this, whether you intended to or not. She patted my hand, the gesture motherly despite the circumstances. The question now is what you do with that reality. I looked down at the sandwich, its perfect triangles and carefully arranged garnish. Everything about this place screamed control, order, power, things I'd never had in my own life. What happens now? Now you stay here until Mr. Vitale determines who ordered the hit and why. Once the threat is neutralized, you can return to your normal life. Isabella made it sound so simple, so temporary. But something in her eyes told me she didn't believe that any more than I did. Dante emerged from what I assumed was a bedroom, his shoulder bandaged and a fresh shirt replacing the blood-stained one. He'd showered, his dark hair still damp, and the pallor from blood loss had faded. He looked dangerous and beautiful and completely out of my league in every way that mattered. "We need to talk," he said, his gaze fixed on me. Isabella rose as smoothly. "I'll give you privacy." She disappeared into another room, leaving me alone with the man whose life I'd saved. Dante sat in the chair across from me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and woody that probably cost more per ounce than I made per hour. "Tell me about yourself, Ava, everything." "There's not much to tell. I'm 26. I've been working at Arabica Coffee for about a year, and I live in a studio apartment in Riverside with a cat named Hemingway." I folded my arms across my chest, defensive. "Pretty boring compared to whatever your life involves." "Family?" "My mom died when I was 19. Dad remarried and moved to Arizona. We're not close." The admission felt too intimate, too revealing, but his eyes demanded honesty. "Boyfriend? Girlfriend? Anyone who might wonder where you are?" I shook my head. "No one." The isolation of my own life struck me suddenly. How I'd built walls so high that there wasn't a single person who would notice if I disappeared for a few days. "Perfect," Dante murmured, though something flickered in his expression that might have been sympathy. "That makes this easier." "Makes what easier?" "Keeping you safe. The fewer connections you have, the fewer leverage points anyone can use against you." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his intensity almost overwhelming in the close quarters. "I'm going to be honest with you, Ava, because you deserve that much after what you did for me. The people who tried to kill me today are part of a rival organization. They've been trying to muscle in on my territory for months, and this was their opening move." "Territory," I repeated. "You mean like drugs? Illegal stuff?" His laugh was dry. "Among other things. I run the Vitale family operations in this city. Legitimate businesses mostly, construction, real estate, waste management. But yes, there are aspects of my work that exist in legal gray areas." "You're in the Mafia." I said it flatly, stating the obvious. "That's what you are." "That's a crude term, but essentially accurate." He didn't look away, didn't try to soften it. "And now you're caught up in it through no fault of your own." I stood up, pacing toward the wall of windows overlooking the city. Somewhere down there was my apartment, my cat, my carefully constructed small life. "So what happens to me? Do I just hide here forever?" "No, I find out who ordered the hit, I eliminate the threat, and I make it clear that you're under my protection. After that, you're free to return to your life." He stood as well, moving to stand beside me at the window. "But I won't lie to you. Once you're seen with me, once you're associated with my name, that association doesn't just disappear. There will always be a target on your back, even a small one." The reality of what he was saying settled over me like a weight. One split-second decision, one moment of not thinking before acting, and I'd fundamentally altered the trajectory of my entire existence. "I want to go home," I whispered. "I want to pretend this morning never happened." "I know." His voice had gentled, and when I risked a glance at him, something almost human looked back at me from those smoke-gray eyes. "But we don't always get what we want. Believe me, I know that better than most." If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. The rest of the day passed in a surreal haze. Isabella showed me to a guest room that was larger than my entire apartment, with an ensuite bathroom done in marble and gold fixtures. She'd laid out clothes for me, expensive things in my size, which should have creeped me out, but instead just added to the dreamlike quality of everything. I showered, washing away the smell of coffee and fear, and changed into soft leggings and an oversized sweater that felt like wearing a cloud. When I emerged, Dante was in the main living area, seated at a dining table covered in papers and speaking rapid-fire Italian into his phone. He glanced up as I entered, his gaze tracking over me in a way that made me suddenly self-conscious, and gestured for me to sit. I did, perching on the edge of the chair like I might need to bolt at any moment. He ended his call and turned his full attention to me. My people reviewed the security footage from the building across from your cafe. Professional setup, expensive equipment. This wasn't some amateur operation. Meaning what? Meaning whoever wants me dead has resources and patience. They've been planning this for a while. He pulled one of the papers toward him, a photograph of a man I didn't recognize, middle-aged with cold eyes. Recognize him? I shook my head. Should I? He's been coming into your cafe every morning for the past 2 weeks, always sits at the window table, always orders black coffee, always watches me when I come in. My blood ran cold. You've been coming to the cafe regularly? 3 times a week, usually around the same time. It's neutral territory, or it was supposed to be, somewhere I could meet with business associates without raising suspicions. He tapped the photograph. This man was casing the place, figuring out sightlines, timing my arrivals. So I've been serving coffee to an assassin spotter for 2 weeks. The hysterical laugh bubbled up again, and I pressed my hand over my mouth to stop it. This is insane. This entire situation is completely insane. Yes, Dante agreed simply. Welcome to my world. I don't want to be in your world, I stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. I want to be in my world, where the most stressful part of my day is remembering how someone likes their latte and whether I have enough for rent. That life is over. He said it gently, but firmly. The moment you warned me, the moment you chose to act instead of standing by, that life ended. You can't go back to it, Ava. Not safely. You keep saying that, but what proof do I have? Maybe I'm just being paranoid. Maybe they were only after you, and now that you're gone, I'm fine. I knew I was grasping at straws, but desperation made me stupid. Dante stood, crossing to a laptop on the counter. He turned it toward me, pulling up surveillance footage from what looked like my apartment building. I watched myself leave that morning, coffee travel mug in hand, locking my door behind me. Normal, routine. Then, about an hour after I'd left, a man appeared in the frame. He picked my lock in under 30 seconds and disappeared inside my apartment. This was recorded at 9:47 this morning, Dante said quietly. About 20 minutes after the shooting at the cafe, they were already moving on you. My hands went numb. What did he do in there? Planted surveillance equipment, cameras in your living room and bedroom, audio in your kitchen and bathroom. They're not just watching you, they're studying you, looking for patterns, weaknesses, leverage. The violation of it made my stomach turn. Some stranger had been in my home, touching my things, invading the only space that was truly mine. Did they hurt Hemingway? Your cat is fine. One of my people retrieved him and brought him here. He's in Isabella's quarters. Dante closed the laptop. You're not going back to that apartment, Ava. Not until this is over. I sank back into the chair, all the fight draining out of me. What do you want from me? Right now? Your cooperation, your trust if I can earn it, and your patience while I handle this situation. He moved closer, and I forced myself not to flinch away. I know you're scared. I know this isn't what you signed up for, but I promise you, I will keep you safe. That's not negotiable. Why do you care? You don't know me. Because you saved my life when you didn't have to, when it would have been easier and safer to do nothing. His voice was low, intense. That means something in my world. It means everything. The weight of his words settled between us, heavy with implications I wasn't ready to examine. The evening deepened into night, the city lights spreading out below us like fallen stars. Isabella brought dinner, pasta in a cream sauce that I barely tasted, garlic bread that stuck in my throat, wine that I drank too quickly. Dante ate sparingly, his phone constantly buzzing with updates I couldn't understand. Around 10, he finally set the device down and looked at me across the table. You should get some sleep. Tomorrow will be busy. Busy how? I have meetings, people I need to talk to, debts I need to call in. Someone tried to kill me in broad daylight in a public place. That's a message, and I need to respond with one of my own. The casual way he discussed violence made my skin crawl, but I was too exhausted to argue. I retreated to the guest room, finding Hemingway curled up on the bed, his orange fur a spot of familiar warmth in this strange new reality. I buried my face in his fur, letting the tears I'd been holding back all day finally fall. What did I do, Hem? I whispered. What the hell did I do? I must have fallen asleep eventually because I woke to darkness and the sound of voices arguing in Italian. I crept to the door, pressing my ear against it. Dante's voice, low and dangerous, and another man's, younger, more agitated. They went back and forth for several minutes before the other man left, the door slamming hard enough to rattle the windows. Silence settled over the apartment, heavy and tense. I was debating whether to go check on Dante when I heard it. A crash, something breaking. I opened my door cautiously, peering out into the darkened living room. Dante stood by the windows, his hand bleeding, pieces of a glass scattered at his feet. His silhouette was rigid, controlled violence barely contained. You should be asleep, he said without turning around. You're bleeding. I moved toward him instinctively, forgetting to be scared. Let me see. He turned, and in the dim light, his face was a mask of barely controlled fury. Go back to bed, Ava. Not until you let me look at your hand. I reached for it, and after a moment's hesitation, he let me take it. A shard of glass had sliced across his palm, not deep, but bleeding steadily. Where's the first aid kit? Bathroom, under the sink. His voice was rough, strained. I retrieved the kit and led him to the couch, flicking on a lamp. In its warm glow, he looked older, tired, the weight of whatever life he led pressing down on those broad shoulders. I cleaned the cut carefully, his eyes on my face the entire time. Why are you helping me? He asked quietly. You should hate me for dragging you into this. I don't know, I admitted, applying antibiotic ointment with steady hands. Maybe because you're the only thing making sense right now, or maybe because I'm an idiot who apparently makes a habit of helping dangerous men who will probably get me killed. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Probably. I wrapped his hand in gauze, taping it securely. What was the argument about? My cousin thinks I should move you to a secondary location, somewhere more remote, harder to find. He flexed his hand experimentally. He thinks keeping you here puts you at risk. What do you think? I think you're safest where I can keep an eye on you personally. His gaze held mine, something electric crackling in the air between us. And I think my cousin doesn't understand that you're not just some witness to be stashed away. You're... He stopped himself, jaw tightening. You're under my protection. That means something. The intensity of his stare made heat bloom in my chest, spreading outward. This was wrong on every level. He was a criminal. I was his unwilling captive, and we were surrounded by violence and danger. But God help me, something in those smoke-gray eyes called to something buried deep inside me. Something I'd thought died years ago, along with my ability to trust. You should get some sleep, I said, standing abruptly, needing distance. Your body needs rest to heal. So does yours. He caught my wrist as I turned to leave, his grip gentle but firm. Thank you for today, for tonight, for everything. I nodded, not trusting my voice, and fled back to the safety of the guest room, my heart hammering for reasons that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the man I was beginning to realize might be far more dangerous to me than any assassin. Morning came with gray light filtering through unfamiliar windows and the smell of coffee that wasn't mine. I lay in the massive bed, Hemingway purring against my side, and stared at the ceiling as reality crashed back over me. This was day 2 of my new life, the one where I couldn't go home, couldn't go to work, couldn't do anything without wondering if someone was watching through a rifle scope. I found Dante in the kitchen, dressed in dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, the bandage on his hand stark against his tanned skin. He was speaking quietly into his phone, but ended the call when he saw me. Coffee? He offered, already reaching for a cup. Please. I slid onto one of the bar stools, accepting the mug he handed me. It was perfect. Cream and 2 sugars, exactly how I took it. How did you know? I pay attention. He leaned against the counter, studying me with those penetrating eyes. How did you sleep? Barely. I wrapped my hands around the warm ceramic, needing something to hold on to. I kept thinking about my apartment, about some stranger going through my things, touching my stuff. I know it's a violation. His voice was gentler than I expected. My people removed all the surveillance equipment. Your apartment is clean now, but I still don't recommend going back until we know who ordered the hit. And when will that be? Soon. I have a meeting this afternoon that should give me answers. He set his own cup down, his expression darkening. There are only a handful of people with the resources and motivation to come after me like this. I'm narrowing down the list. I thought about what that meant. The kind of meeting where people discussed murder and revenge over expensive scotch. What happens when you find out who it was? I eliminate the threat. He said it so simply, like he was discussing taking out the trash instead of taking someone's life. That's how this world works, Ava. You show weakness, you show mercy, and you die. That's a pretty bleak way to live. It's the only way to survive. He moved closer, and I found myself leaning back slightly, overwhelmed by his presence. You asked me last night why I care. The truth is, in my position, I can't afford to care about many people. It makes you vulnerable, gives your enemies leverage. But you risked yourself for me, without hesitation, without knowing who I was or what I could offer you in return. That kind of selflessness is rare in my world. It's worth protecting. The way he looked at me made my breath catch, like I was something precious, valuable beyond measure. It was intoxicating and terrifying in equal parts. I'm not some saint, Dante. I just didn't think. Sometimes, not thinking is the bravest thing you can do. He reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair back from my face. The touch was feather light, but sent electricity racing across my skin. I have to leave for a few hours. Isabella will be here, and I'm leaving Marco outside. You'll be safe. Who's Marco? My head of security, former special forces, completely loyal. Nothing will get past him. He grabbed his jacket from where it was draped over a chair. Don't leave the apartment. Don't go near the windows. And if anything feels wrong, even slightly, you call me immediately. He handed me a phone, expensive, sleek, with only 2 numbers programmed into it. Mine and Marco's. I took the phone, feeling the weight of his concern. Be careful. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or pleasure. I'm always careful, but thank you. He hesitated, like he wanted to say more, then seemed to think better of it and left. The hours crawled by with excruciating slowness. Isabella brought lunch, a caprese salad, and fresh bread, but I barely tasted it. I tried to read, to watch television, to do anything to distract myself from the growing sense of unease that had settled in my chest like a stone. Something felt wrong, though I couldn't articulate what. Around 3 in the afternoon, my borrowed phone rang. Dante's name flashed on the screen. Hello? How would you feel about getting out of the apartment for a bit? His voice was tight, controlled. Somewhere public, somewhere you can breathe. I thought you said I had to stay here. Plans changed. I need you to do something for me, and it requires leaving the building. There was the background noise, voices, traffic. Marco will bring you. Dress nice, but not too formal. You're meeting me at Rossi's on 5th Street in an hour. Alarm bells rang in my head. What's going on? You sound... Just trust me, Ava. Please. The vulnerability in those last words made my decision for me. Okay, I'll be there. Isabella helped me prepare, pulling out a dress I hadn't noticed in the closet, deep emerald green that hugged my curves and fell to just above my knees. She did my makeup with expert hands, her expression troubled but focused. Mr. Vitali asked me to give you this, she said, producing a small box. Inside was a necklace, delicate gold chain with a small pendant in the shape of a bird in flight. It was beautiful, simple, and far more expensive than anything I'd ever owned. I can't accept this. You must. In our world, jewelry is more than decoration. It's a signal, a declaration. Isabella fastened it around my neck, her fingers quick and sure. This tells anyone who sees it that you belong to the Vitale family, that you're under Mr. Dante's protection. I don't belong to anyone, I protested, even as the weight of the pendant settled between my collarbones, warm against my skin. Perhaps not, but they don't need to know that. She stepped back, examining her work with a critical eye. You look perfect. Remember, keep your head high, your expression calm. Never let them see fear. Marco was a mountain of a man with kind eyes that didn't match his intimidating exterior. He led me to the elevator, then out through an underground parking garage where another black SUV waited. We drove through the city in silence, his eyes constantly scanning our surroundings, one hand resting near what I assumed was a concealed weapon. Rossi's was the kind of restaurant where you needed a reservation months in advance and the prices weren't listed on the menu. Marco escorted me through the front door, and every eye in the place turned to assess me. I felt naked under their scrutiny, but forced myself to keep my spine straight, my expression neutral, just as Isabella had instructed. Dante waited at a corner table, and he wasn't alone. 2 men sat with him, one older, distinguished, with silver hair and a face carved from granite. The other younger, maybe 30, with cold eyes that tracked my approach with predatory interest. Dante stood as I reached to the table, his hand going to the small of my back in a gesture that felt both protective and possessive. "Gentlemen, this is Ava. Ava, this is Salvatore Messina and his son, Luca." I recognized the name from news reports. Messina was old money, old power, the kind of family that had been running things in this city since Prohibition. Salvatore's smile didn't reach his eyes. Enchanted, Dante didn't mention he was seeing anyone. "It's recent," Dante said smoothly, pulling out my chair. As I sat, his hand squeezed my shoulder briefly, a warning or reassurance, I couldn't tell which. "She's lovely," Luca said, his gaze traveling over me in a way that made my skin crawl. "Where did you two meet?" "At a café," I answered before Dante could, some instinct telling me that appearing weak or silent would be a mistake. He has terrible taste in coffee, but excellent timing. Salvatore laughed, a booming sound that drew more stares from nearby tables. "Beautiful and bold. I like her, Dante. She's an improvement over that last girl. What was her name? Valentina?" Dante's expression never changed, but I felt him tense beside me. Ancient history. Of course. Salvatore waved a dismissive hand. "I only mention it because Valentina was asking about you just last week. Seems she heard about the unfortunate incident at that little coffee shop, wanted to know if you were all right." The hair on the back of my neck stood up. This wasn't a social lunch. It was an interrogation, maybe even a trap. I reached for my water glass, buying time to think, and felt Dante's hand find mine under the table. His grip was firm, grounding. "I appreciate her concern," Dante said, his tone mild, but his thumb tracing circles on my palm in what felt like nervous energy. "But as you can see, I'm fine. Better than fine, actually." "Yes, thanks to your lovely companion here." Luca leaned forward, his elbows on the table. "Tell me, Ava, what made you decide to warn Dante? Most people would have run." The question was casual, but loaded with meaning. I met his gaze directly, refusing to look away first. "I don't run from things that scare me. I face them." "Brave." Something flickered in Luca's eyes, respect or calculation I couldn't tell. "Or foolish." "Perhaps both," I conceded. "I'm still deciding which." Salvatore laughed again, but this time it sounded genuine. "I see why you're keeping her close, Dante. She's got fire." He signaled for the waiter, and food began arriving. Courses I didn't remember anyone ordering, each more elaborate than the last. The meal stretched on for nearly 2 hours, the conversation dancing around topics I only half understood. Territories and agreements, old grudges and new alliances. I ate mechanically, hyper-aware of Dante beside me, the way he navigated the verbal minefield with practiced ease. But underneath the surface pleasantries, tension coiled like a spring wound too tight. Finally, as dessert was being cleared, Salvatore leaned back in his chair with the satisfied air of a man who'd gotten what he wanted. "It's good to see you've found someone worth protecting, Dante. A man with nothing to lose is dangerous, but a man with something to lose, that's someone you can work with." Is that what this was about? Dante's voice had gone cold. Dangerous. Determining my vulnerabilities? Just ensuring we're all on the same page. Salvatore stood, his son rising with him. The city is changing. Old rules are being challenged. It's important to know where everyone stands. After they left, Dante remained silent for a long moment, his jaw tight. "We need to go? Now." He threw cash on the table. far more than the meal could have cost, and ushered me out through a back entrance where Marco waited with the SUV. Only once we were inside, the doors locked and the vehicle moving, did Dante speak. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have brought you into that." "What just happened back there?" I demanded, my heart still racing. "That wasn't just lunch." "Salvatore was sending a message. He knows about the hit, probably knew about it before it happened." Dante's hands clenched into fists. "And by bringing you, by showing that I have someone I care about, I just painted a target on your back bigger than the one that was already there." The words, "someone I care about," echoed in my head, but I forced myself to focus on the larger issue. "So he's your enemy?" "It's more complicated than that. In our world, today's enemy is tomorrow's ally and vice versa. Salvatore is powerful enough that I can't move against him without proof, but clever enough to never leave proof." He turned to face me, and the raw emotion in his eyes stole my breath. "I thought I was protecting you by keeping you close, by letting people see that you matter to me. But I might have just made everything worse." "Then why did you do it?" I asked quietly. "Because the alternative was leaving you vulnerable and alone. Because every instinct I have screams at me to keep you safe, even when logic says I should put distance between us." He reached up, his fingers grazing the pendant at my throat. "Because from the moment you warned me about that laser sight, something changed, and I won't pretend you don't matter." The confession hung between us, heavy with implications. I should have been scared, should have demanded he take me to the police, or put me on a plane far away from this city and everything it contained. Instead, I found myself leaning closer, drawn by the raw honesty in his voice. "What happened to your ex, Valentina?" Darkness crossed his features. "She was killed. 2 years ago, caught in crossfire meant for me. I swore I'd never let anyone get that close again, never give my enemies that kind of leverage." His hand cupped my cheek, his touch impossibly gentle for someone capable of such violence. "And then you came along and destroyed every wall I'd built." "Maybe your walls needed destroying," I whispered. He kissed me then, a collision of desperate need and tender restraint. His lips were warm, firm, demanding, yet questioning, and I kissed him back with a recklessness that should have terrified me. This was insane. He was a criminal, a killer, everything I should have been running from. But God help me, in his arms I felt safer than I had in years, seen in a way I'd never experienced before. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "This is a mistake. Probably the biggest one I've ever made," I agreed. "But I'm tired of playing it safe. Safe got me nowhere. Maybe dangerous is exactly what I need. Dangerous will get you killed." But even as he said it, he was pulling me closer, his hands tangled in my hair. "I can't promise you safety, Ava. I can't promise you a normal life or a happy ending. All I can offer is my protection, my resources, and my word that I will do everything in my power to keep you alive." "That's more than anyone else has ever offered me," I said honestly. Because it was true. I'd spent years alone, building walls of my own, keeping everyone at arm's length because trusting people had only ever led to disappointment. But Dante, for all his darkness and danger, had been nothing but honest with me. Brutal, perhaps, but honest. We arrived back at the penthouse to find Isabella waiting, her expression grave. She handed Dante a tablet without a word. His face went carefully blank as he read whatever was on the screen, then he looked at me with something like regret. I need to handle something. Stay here with Isabella. What's wrong? Someone leaked information about our lunch meeting. It's all over the underground networks. Dante Vitale's new woman, the girl who saved his life. He gripped the tablet so hard I thought it might crack. Every two-bit gang and rival family now knows you exist, knows you're important to me. I need to do damage control before this gets worse. Fear lanced through me, cold and sharp. How much worse can it get? You don't want to know. He kissed my forehead, a brief touch that somehow conveyed more than words could. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone except me or Isabella. Understand? I nodded, throat too tight for words. He left, and the apartment felt cavernous without him, full of shadows that suddenly seemed threatening. Isabella put a gentle hand on my arm. Come, we'll wait together. Hours passed with no word. Isabella made tea. I didn't drink and tried to distract me with small talk that couldn't hold my attention. Every sound made me jump. The elevator, footsteps in the hallway, the distant wail of sirens. Night fell over the city, and still Dante didn't return. Around midnight, my borrowed phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Is this Ava? A woman's voice, cultured, with an accent similar to Dante's. Dante Vitale's new pet? Ice flooded my veins. Who is this? Someone who wants to help you, believe it or not. My name is Valentina. The phone nearly slipped from my suddenly nerveless fingers. That's not possible. You're dead. Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated. Her laugh was bitter. Or more accurately, carefully orchestrated. I needed Dante to think I was gone so I could disappear, start over somewhere he couldn't find me. But then I heard he'd found someone new, someone he's apparently willing to die for, and I had to make sure you knew what you were getting into. I don't believe you, but my voice shook with uncertainty. Smart girl, don't believe me. Believe the evidence. My phone buzzed with an incoming message, a photograph of a woman who looked like the Italian version of a movie star, beautiful and dangerous, standing next to a very much alive and laughing Dante. The timestamp showed it was taken 6 months ago. He told you I was killed in crossfire meant for him. The truth is, I faked my death to escape him. Do you know why? I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Because Dante Vitale doesn't love people, Ava. He collects them, possesses them, owns them. And when you try to leave, when you realize the cage he's built around you, he won't let you go. I had to die to be free of him. What will you have to do? The call ended, leaving me staring at the phone in horror. Isabella appeared in the doorway, her face concerned. Ava, what's wrong? Valentina called me, I whispered. She's alive. Isabella's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Knowledge, maybe? Or resignation? What did she tell you? That Dante lied about how she died, that he's dangerous, possessive, controlling. I looked up at her, desperate for reassurance. Is it true? Isabella was quiet for a long moment. Mr. Vitale is a complicated man. He exists in a world where trust is currency and betrayal is death. Yes, he can be possessive. Yes, he protects what he considers his with a ferocity that can seem frightening. But he has never lied to you, Ava. Not once. Can Valentina say the same? Before I could answer, the apartment door opened. Dante walked in, blood on his shirt and a cut above his eyebrow, but alive. His eyes went immediately to me, widening when he saw my face. What happened? Valentina called me, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. She told me you lied, that she's alive, and you've been using her death as some tragic backstory to make yourself seem more human. He went completely still. She contacted you? How? Does it matter? Is it true? Did you lie about her death? No. The word was absolute, unshakable. Valentina died 2 years ago in front of me. I held her while she bled out on a warehouse floor. I buried her with my own hands. He moved toward me, stopping when I flinched back. Pain crossed his features. Someone is playing games, trying to divide us. The photo, the voice. It can all be faked. How do I know you're not the one lying? I demanded, even as my heart screamed that he was telling the truth, that I was being manipulated. Because I've never lied to you, Ava. Not once. I've been brutal. I've been blunt, but I've never lied. He held out his phone. Call my cousin. Call Marco. Call anyone who was there that night. They'll tell you the same thing. Valentina is dead, and whoever called you is trying to destroy what we're building before it can even begin. I stared at him, this dangerous man with blood on his clothes and violence in his eyes, this man who'd shown me more honesty and care in 2 days than I'd received in years. I want to believe you. Then believe me. Trust your instincts. Trust what you've seen from me, not what some phantom voice tells you over the phone. He dared to step closer, his hand reaching for mine. I won't lie and say I'm a good man. I've killed. I've hurt people. I've done things that would horrify you. But I've never pretended to be anything other than what I am. Not with you. Never with you. The truth of it resonated in my bones, deeper than logic or reason. I took his hand, feeling the calluses and strength, the way his fingers curled around mine like I was something precious worth holding on to. Someone really wants us apart. Yes, which means we're a threat together. His thumb stroked across my knuckles. Are you with me, Ava? Truly with me, knowing what that means? I thought about my small apartment, my simple life, the safety of obscurity. Then I thought about the way he looked at me, the way he'd risked everything to protect me, the way he made me feel alive in a way I'd never experienced. I'm with you. God help me. I'm with you. He pulled me into his arms, and I went willingly, breathing in the scent of him, blood and cologne and something uniquely Dante. Then we face this together, he murmured against my hair. No more secrets, no more half-truths. You deserve that much. Tell me everything, I demanded. Who's really behind the assassination attempt? What Salvatore was really saying at lunch? What we're actually up against? And there, in the middle of the night, with the city spread out below us, like a map of possibilities and dangers, he did. He told me about the territories being fought over, the alliances shifting like sand, the old families clinging to power while new players challenged from all sides. He told me about Salvatore's son Luca, who wanted to prove himself by taking down the Vitale family, about the weapons shipment that had gone missing, the millions of dollars in play, the delicate balance that kept the city from descending into all-out war. And he told me about Valentina, not the sanitized version he'd given before, but the whole truth. How she'd been ambitious and cunning. How she'd played both sides. How her death had been her own greed finally catching up with her. I cared for her, he admitted, but I never loved her. She was a partner, an alliance, but never... He stopped, his eyes searching mine. Never what you're becoming to me. The words should have terrified me. Instead, they felt like coming home, The truth changed everything and nothing all at once. In the days that followed Valentina's phantom call, Dante taught me to see the world through his eyes. The subtle signals exchanged between men on street corners, the way territory was marked not with signs, but with presence. The delicate ecosystem of violence and respect that kept the city from tearing itself apart. I learned to read the room the way he did, to understand that every gesture carried weight, every word was a negotiation. But more than that, I learned to read him. The way his jaw tightened when he was worried but wouldn't admit it. The soft exhale when he returned home and found me safe. The way his fingers traced patterns on my skin in the dark hours of morning, like he was memorizing me against the possibility of loss. We existed in a strange limbo, too dangerous to be called happiness, too intense to be anything else. On the 5th day, Marco came to the apartment with news that made Dante's expression go cold and hard. We found the shooter. He's willing to talk in exchange for protection. Where? Dante was already reaching for his jacket, the one he wore when he meant business. The warehouse on Porter Street. But Dante... Marco hesitated, his eyes flicking to me. He says he'll only talk if she comes too. Says he has information about why she was targeted specifically, not just as collateral. Every protective instinct Dante possessed flared to life. Absolutely not. It's obviously a trap. Then I'm coming anyway, I said, standing from where I'd been curled up reading. If there's information about why I'm in danger, I deserve to hear it. Ava, don't. I cut him off, moving to stand before him. You said no more secrets, no more half-truths. That goes both ways. If someone wants me dead badly enough to orchestrate all of this, I need to know why. He stared at me for a long moment, and I watched the war play out behind his eyes, the desire to protect me warring with the respect he'd developed for my autonomy. Finally, he nodded once, sharp and decisive. Fine, but you stay behind me at all times. Marco and his team secure the perimeter first, and at the first sign of trouble, you run. Understand? I understand. I didn't mention that I had no intention of running if it meant leaving him behind. Some things were better left unsaid. The warehouse district was a graveyard of industry, all rusted metal and broken windows. The building Marco led us to looked abandoned, but I'd learned enough to spot the signs of occupation. Fresh tire tracks in the dusty lot, the glint of surveillance cameras hidden in the eaves, the way certain shadows moved with purpose. Dante kept me close, his hand a constant presence at the small of my back as we entered through a side door that opened onto a vast, empty space broken only by support columns and the detritus of whatever had once been manufactured here. The shooter waited in the center, tied to a chair but conscious, his face a mess of bruises that made my stomach turn. 2 of Dante's men flanked him, and Marco took up position near the door we'd entered through. The whole scene felt staged, theatrical, and my unease grew with every step. You wanted to talk, Dante said, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. Talk. The man lifted his head with effort, and when his eyes found me, something like pity crossed his features. She doesn't know, does she? You haven't told her. Told me what? I asked before Dante could respond. Why you were really at that cafe that morning. Why the timing was so perfect. The shooter's laugh was wet, painful. It wasn't random chance, sweetheart. Nothing in this world is random. Dante's hand tightened on my arm. Don't listen to him. He's trying to divide us. Your boy Dante has been planning to absorb Salvatore Messina's territory for months. Needed a catalyst, something that would justify going to war without looking like the aggressor. The man coughed, blood speckling his lips. So he arranged for a hit on himself that he knew would fail. Used his own life as bait to draw out Messina's people, give him an excuse to strike back. "That's insane, sir," I said, but my voice wavered. "Why would anyone risk their own life like that?" "Because he's Dante Vitale, and he's spent his whole life calculating odds, taking risks that would break lesser men. One failed assassination attempt in exchange for legitimate justification to destroy his biggest rival? That's a trade he'd make in a heartbeat." The shooter looked at Dante with something like respect. "I almost admire it. The only thing he didn't account for was you actually saving him. That wasn't part of the plan, was it, boss?" The silence that followed was deafening. I turned to face Dante, searching his expression for denial, for the reassurance that this was another lie, another manipulation. But what I saw instead was guilt, raw and unmistakable, and my world tilted sideways. "Tell me he's lying. It's more complicated than he's making it sound. Tell me you didn't set up your own assassination." My voice rose, echoing off the concrete walls. "Tell me I didn't risk my life to save someone who was orchestrating the whole thing." Dante's jaw worked, and for the first time since I'd known him, he looked uncertain. I knew the shooter would miss. I had people in position to take him out the moment he fired. It was controlled, calculated. Controlled? I stepped back, needing distance. "I thought I was going to watch you die. I thought—" My voice broke. "And it was all theater? All just another move in your endless game?" "Not all of it." He reached for me, but I jerked away. "Ava, you have to understand, in my world, you don't wait for threats to materialize. You create situations you can control. Yes, I orchestrated the attempt, but everything after, bringing you into my protection, keeping you safe, what we've become, that was real. That was never part of any plan. How am I supposed to believe anything you say?" Tears burned behind my eyes, and I hated myself for them. "You've been lying to me from the beginning." "I never lied about my feelings. I never lied about wanting to protect you." His voice was raw, stripped of the usual control. "Everything I told you about what you mean to me, about how you've changed me, that was truth, Ava. The only truth that matters." The shooter laughed again, that horrible wet sound. "Touching, really. But you're missing the best part. Tell her why Messina really wanted you dead, Dante. Tell her about her father." My blood turned to ice. "What does my father have to do with any of this?" Dante closed his eyes briefly, and I knew with horrible certainty, that whatever came next would shatter everything. "Your father wasn't just some man who remarried and moved to Arizona. Richard Morrison was one of Salvatore's top lieutenants for 20 years. He laundered money, orchestrated hits, built an empire. And 10 years ago, he tried to betray Salvatore, tried to sell information to the feds in exchange for immunity and witness protection." "No." The word came out barely above a whisper. "My father worked in insurance. He was boring and distant and he died 3 years ago in what the police ruled a car accident, but was actually a hit ordered by Salvatore." Dante's voice was gentle, like he could soften the blow of what he was revealing. "I've known who you were since the day I first walked into that cafe. Known that you were Richard Morrison's daughter, that Salvatore had been keeping tabs on you for years in case you ever became useful leverage. That's why I kept coming back, why I was there that morning. I was trying to figure out how to protect you without revealing what I knew." The warehouse spun around me. Every truth I'd built my life on was a lie, every memory now suspect. So everything Meeting you, saving you, and all of it. It was never random at all. You were using me, just like everyone else. At first, maybe. But Ava, he took a step toward me, his expression desperate in a way I'd never seen. The moment you warned me about that laser sight, the moment you put yourself at risk for a stranger, everything changed. I stopped seeing you as Richard Morrison's daughter and started seeing you as Ava. Brave, selfless, extraordinary Ava. Everything since then has been about keeping you safe, about protecting you from a truth I knew would hurt you. By lying to me, by manipulating me. I wrapped my arms around myself, feeling like I might shatter. My whole life has been a lie. My father, my safety, my choices, none of it was real. I was never just a barista living a quiet life. I was always a target, always a pawn. You're not a pawn, Dante's voice was fierce. You're the one thing in my world that's real, that matters beyond strategy and power. I love you, Ava. I know I have no right to. I know I've made choices that hurt you, but it doesn't change the fact that somewhere between your courage and your compassion, you became everything. The declaration should have been romantic, world-changing. Instead, it felt like another manipulation, another tool in his arsenal. Love isn't supposed to come wrapped in lies and violence. It's not supposed to cost everything you believe about yourself. A sound at the far end of the warehouse made everyone freeze. Marco's voice crackled through Dante's earpiece, urgent and clipped. We've got movement, multiple vehicles, armed men. It's Messina, and he's brought an army. The shooters started laughing, a manic sound that raised every hair on my body. That's the beauty of it. I was never going to talk. I was just bait. Salvatore knew you'd bring her here. Knew you'd be so focused on protecting her from the truth that you wouldn't see the real trap until it was too late. He wanted you both in one place, away from your fortress, vulnerable. Dante's gun was in his hand instantly, his body shifting to put himself between me and every possible entrance. Marco, extraction now. They're blocking all exits. We're outnumbered 3-1. Marco's voice was steady, despite the odds. Orders? I watched Dante calculate, saw the exact moment he realized we were trapped. This was it, the cost of his world, of his choices, of whatever twisted thing had grown between us. We were going to die here because he'd played games with both our lives. There's a drainage tunnel that runs under the east side of the building, I said suddenly, the words tumbling out before I'd fully formed the thought. My father brought me here once when I was 8, said it was where he used to work. He showed me the tunnel, said it was always good to have an escape route. I thought he was being paranoid. I didn't know. You remember how to find it? Dante demanded. I nodded, my mind racing through memories I'd dismissed as childhood confusion. My father showing me the hidden grate, making me promise never to tell my mother about our adventure, teaching me to always know the exits. He'd been training me, even then preparing me for a world I didn't know existed. Show us, now! Dante barked orders into his earpiece while pulling me toward the east wall. The sound of vehicles outside grew louder, engines cutting off, doors slamming. We had minutes, maybe less. I led them to what looked like a solid wall, but when Dante and Marco shifted aside some old machinery, the grate my father had shown me all those years ago was still there, hidden but accessible. The tunnel beyond was narrow, dark, and smelled of rot and standing water. But it was a way out. Marco, you and the others create a diversion. Make them think we're trying to break through the north exit. Dante was already prying open the grate, his movements efficient despite the urgency. We'll go through the tunnel, Regroup at the secondary location. Boss, if we create a diversion, we'll be sitting ducks. Marco's face was grim. There won't be any regrouping for us. That's an order. The finality in Dante's voice made it clear there was no room for argument. You've served the family well, Marco. If anything happens, nothing's going to happen to you, not on my watch. Marco clasped Dante's shoulder briefly, a goodbye between men who'd fought together, bled together. Then he was gone, moving back toward the main space with the others, their footsteps echoing like drum beats. Dante turned to me, his face illuminated by the dim light filtering through the grate. Whatever happens down there, whatever you hear from up here, you keep moving. You don't stop, you don't look back, understand? I'm not leaving you. You are. His hands cupped my face, thumbs brushing away tears I hadn't realized were falling. This is my world, my war, my consequences. But you can still walk away from this. Find a new life. Become someone else. Be free of all of it. After everything you've told me tonight, you think I want to run? That I can just forget and move on? I gripped his wrists, holding his hands against my face. I'm angry at you, Dante. I'm furious at the lies and the manipulation and the way you've turned my entire life into something I don't recognize, but I'm not leaving you to die for it. Gunfire erupted above us, the sound of Marco and his team engaging Messina's forces. Dante flinched but didn't move. Why? After everything I've done, everything I've cost you, why would you stay? Because somewhere in all the lies and violence, I fell in love with the man who held a dying 4-year-old's stuffed rabbit like it was sacred, who protected a stranger because she showed him kindness, who looks at me like I'm worth protecting even when it costs him everything. I pulled him closer, my forehead resting against his. You're right that I'm not a pawn, but I'm also not a victim who needs rescuing. I'm someone choosing to fight for what matters, and whether I like it or not, you matter. He kissed me then, desperate and tender, a promise and an apology wrapped in one gesture. When we broke apart, more gunfire echoed above, closer this time. We need to go, now. The tunnel was everything nightmare fuel was made of, cramped, wet, and pitch black, except for the flashlight on Dante's phone. We moved as quickly as the space allowed, my breath coming in sharp gasps that had nothing to do with physical exertion and everything to do with the sounds filtering down from above. Gunshots, shouts, the sharp crack of wood splintering. Marco and his team were dying so we could escape, and the weight of that sacrifice pressed down on me with every step. How far? Dante asked, his hand tight around mine. Maybe half a mile. It comes out near the old rail yard. I tried to remember, tried to pull up details from a memory nearly 2 decades old. My father said there would be a ladder at the end. We moved in silence, broken only by our breathing and the distant sounds of violence. Then, gradually, the sounds faded, replaced by the drip of water and our own footfalls. Either the fight had moved away from us, or there was no one left to fight. I refused to let myself dwell on which. After what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, I saw it, a pinpoint of light ahead, growing larger as we approached, the ladder my father had promised, leading up to a grate that opened onto the night air. Dante climbed first, checking that the coast was clear before helping me up. We emerged in a tangle of weeds and abandoned train tracks, the warehouse a distant glow of headlights and chaos on the horizon. My phone, the borrowed one Dante had given me, buzzed in my pocket. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Your boy made it out. Wounded but alive. Meet at the church on 7th. Come alone if you want him to stay that way. S. I showed it to Dante, watching his face go hard. It's Salvatore. He has Marco. It's a trap, I said, even though I knew he would go anyway. Of course it is. He checked his gun, his movements mechanical, exhausted. But I don't leave my people behind. Not Marco, not anyone who's bled for me. Then I'm coming too. Ava, no arguments. We're past that now. I squared my shoulders, feeling something shift inside me, a hardening, a transformation. This world had claimed my father, had shaped my childhood without my knowledge, had marked me before I was old enough to understand. I could keep running from it, keep pretending I was just an innocent bystander. Or I could step into it fully, eyes open, and fight for the people who'd fought for me. Besides, Salvatore wants us both there. That's what this has all been about, hasn't it? Destroying you by destroying everyone you care about. He thinks having Marco will make you weak, make you sloppy. Let's prove him wrong. The church was an old stone building that had seen better decades, its stained glass windows dark except for candlelight flickering from within. Dante and I approached carefully, his gun drawn but held low. The front door stood open, in invitation or warning. Inside, Salvatore waited near the altar, looking every inch the old-world patriarch in his expensive suit. Marco knelt before him, bloodied but conscious, his hands bound. Luca stood to the side, a gun trained casually on Marco's head. And there, in the front pew, sat a woman I recognized from the photograph. Valentina, very much alive. "Welcome," Salvatore said, his voice echoing in the sacred space. "I believe we have much to discuss about loyalty, betrayal, and the price of love." Dante's gun came up, but at least 5 other weapons appeared from the shadows, all trained on us. We were surrounded, outgunned, and exactly where Salvatore wanted us. "What do you want?" "What I've always wanted. This city. Free from the Vitali family's grip. Your father built an empire, but empires fall, Dante. Yours ends tonight." Salvatore gestured, and Luca pressed the gun harder against Marco's temple. "Unless you'd like to negotiate?" "Let him go. This is between us." "But that's where you're wrong. This was never between us." Salvatore moved closer, his eyes on me now. "This is about the sins of our fathers. Richard Morrison betrayed me, and I made sure he paid for it. But you—" He studied me like I was a puzzle. "You were supposed to be insurance, leverage if I ever needed it. Instead, you became something else entirely. You made Dante Vitale, the most calculating man I know, reckless. Love does that. Makes us vulnerable, makes us stupid." "Let them go," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Whatever my father did, whatever Dante did, I'm the one you really want. Use me as your insurance. Let everyone else walk away." "Ava, no!" Dante reached for me, but I stepped away, moving toward Salvatore. "This is what you wanted, isn't it? The final blow. Dante's father took your brother in a territorial dispute 20 years ago. My father betrayed you 10 years ago. You've been planning this revenge for decades, building to this moment." I was improvising, putting together pieces from everything Dante had told me, everything I'd observed. Taking Dante's life would be too quick, too merciful. But taking the woman he loves, making him watch her die because of his choices, that's the real punishment. Salvatore's smile was chilling. "Smart girl. I can see why he's drawn to you. Then let's make a deal. My heart hammered, but I forced myself to keep talking, to keep his attention on me. I give myself up willingly. You let Marco and Dante leave unharmed, and in return, you get your revenge and a Vitale who owes you a life debt. That has to be worth more than a bloodbath in a church. You don't speak for me, Dante said, his voice dangerous. Ava, stop. Yes, I do, because I love you, and that means I get to choose how this ends. I turned to face him, memorizing every line of his face, every detail I'd come to know. You've spent your whole life protecting people, carrying the weight of your family's legacy, never letting anyone else take the burden. But that's not strength, Dante. Strength is knowing when to let go, when to trust someone else to be as strong as you are. I can't, his voice broke. I can't lose you. Not like this. You're not losing me. You're letting me save you the way you've saved me 100 times over. I crossed to him, standing on my toes to press a kiss to his lips, soft and brief and final. Now go. Take Marco and get out of here. Build something better from the ashes of tonight. And know that whatever happens, I chose this. I chose you. That matters. Before he could respond, before Salvatore could change his mind, I walked to where Valentina sat and knelt beside her. You faked your death to escape this world. I'm walking into it willingly. Which one of us is braver? Her laugh was soft, sad. Neither brave nor foolish, just in love. And that's the most dangerous thing of all. The sound of sirens cut through the night, distant but growing closer. Salvatore's head snapped toward the door. What did you do? Insurance, I said, pulling out my phone and showing him the active call to 911 I'd started the moment we entered the church. Every word you've said has been recorded and transmitted. The police know where we are, know what you've done. You can kill us all, but it won't stop what's coming. Chaos erupted. Salvatore's men moved toward the exits, weighing loyalty against survival. Luca's gun swung wildly, his finger tightening on the trigger aimed at Marco, but Dante was faster, his shot taking Luca in the shoulder and sending him sprawling. Marco rolled, breaking free of his bonds with strength born of desperation. And through it all, I stood frozen, watching my bluff play out, praying I'd timed it right. The police burst through the doors, and suddenly the church was full of shouting, weapons, commands to drop guns and get on the ground. In the confusion, Dante reached me, pulling me against him with shaking hands. You recorded him, you brilliant, reckless woman. You got him on tape. Not exactly. I held up my phone, showing the blank screen. I was bluffing, but the sirens were real. I triggered the silent alarm before we came in. Figured either the police would save us or document our deaths. Either way, Salvatore loses. He stared at me, and then he laughed, a real, genuine sound of disbelief and admiration. You gambled our lives on a bluff. I learned from the best. I leaned into him, letting the adrenaline finally crash over me. Is it over? Not over, but changed. He looked around at the chaos, at Salvatore being handcuffed, at Valentina slipping out a side door while everyone was distracted. Everything's changed. The weeks that followed were a blur of police statements, legal maneuvering, and the slow dismantling of the empire that had defined both our lives. Salvatore went down for conspiracy, for the attempted murder of his rivals, for decades of crimes that finally caught up with him. Dante testified, trading information for immunity, using his knowledge to bring down others who'd profited from the violence. It wasn't redemption, The things he'd done couldn't be washed clean by cooperation. But it was a kind of reckoning, a choice to step away from the life that had claimed his father, his grandfather, generations of Vitalis who'd known nothing else. Marco recovered, though he'd carry scars from that night. The others who'd fallen defending us were honored, remembered, mourned properly. And me, I stood beside Dante through it all, learning that love in the aftermath of violence looked different than love in the heat of crisis. It was quieter, harder, full of difficult conversations about trust and truth. But it was also deeper, built on a foundation of choices made with open eyes rather than desperate circumstances. On a gray morning, 3 months after the church, I stood in Arabica Coffee again, the place where everything had started. The owner had offered me my job back, and I'd surprised myself by accepting. Not because I needed it, Dante had made sure I'd never need anything again, but because I needed to prove to myself that I could exist in both worlds. That being in love with a former criminal didn't mean I had to abandon every piece of who I'd been. The bell over the door chimed, and Dante walked in, looking devastatingly normal, in jeans and a sweater. He'd stepped away from the family business entirely, sold off the legitimate enterprises, dissolved the less legitimate ones. What he did now was quieter work, community investment, helping people escape the life he'd once led, trying to build something that honored the dead without perpetuating the cycle of violence. "The usual?" I asked with a smile, already reaching for a cup. "Always." He settled at the corner table, the same one where I'd first seen that red dot on his chest. "Though you really do make terrible cappuccino." "I know, but you keep coming back anyway." "I do." His eyes met mine, smoky gray, in the morning light. "Every day for the rest of my life, if you'll have me." I set the terrible cappuccino in front of him, my hand brushing his, and felt the electric connection that hadn't dimmed despite everything. "That sounds like a life sentence." "After everything we've survived, a life sentence sounds like mercy." He caught my hand, holding it gently. "We're not the same people who met in this cafe, Ava. We've seen too much, lost too much, changed too much. But if you'll let me, I'd like to spend the rest of our days building something better from what we've broken." I thought about my father, about the lies and violence that had shaped my life without my knowledge. I thought about the cost of love in a world built on betrayal. And I thought about the man before me, flawed and dangerous and trying desperately to be better. I'm not looking for perfect, Dante. I'm looking for real. And this, us, that's the realest thing I've ever known. He smiled, that rare, genuine expression that transformed his entire face. And in a cafe that smelled of coffee and new beginnings, surrounded by the ordinary rhythm of a world that kept turning despite everything, I leaned down and kissed him. Not because I'd saved his life or he'd saved mine, but because we'd chosen each other, over and over, through fire and lies and the brutal honesty of survival. Some love stories are fairy tales. Ours was a war story, hard-won and scarred, but somehow still standing. And that, I'd learned, was the only kind of love worth having. The kind that survived not despite the darkness, but because we'd faced it together and refused to let it win. The city moved on around us. New powers rose to fill the vacuum Salvatore left behind. Old grudges simmered beneath new alliances. The machine of violence and ambition kept turning, just as it always had. But for the first time, I understood that we didn't have to be part of it. We could exist in the spaces between, building something quieter, something ours. And if that red dot ever appeared again, if the past came calling with violence in its wake, we'd face it the way we'd faced everything else, together, eyes open, refusing to let fear make our choices for us. Because that's what love was in the end. Not the absence of danger, but the courage to stand in the face of it and say, this person matters more than my safety. This connection is worth the cost. I'd risked everything for a stranger once, in a moment of instinct that changed both our lives. Now I was choosing to risk everything again, deliberately, for the man that stranger had become. And somehow, that felt like the bravest thing I'd ever done. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.